And welcome to the Security Guy and CIA Spy Pod broadcast. I am Robert Siciliano, and this is
Peter Warmka from Orlando. How are you doing, Robert?
Hey, buddy. I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. Actually, I feel safe because I'm outside of that path of the eclipse today, and all the crazy people that are following it. Not crazy people, but you know what I mean. So I think I'm going to be pretty safe. And maybe I'll just see it on the news. I'll see the same image on the news. Then a lot of people are going to see live.
That's a funny observation. Yeah. So as a matter of fact, my one of my business partners, he's heading 4 hours to Vermont to see it. My dad is heading 4 hours to Maine to see it.
Wow. I mean, I hear people that are coming from overseas, from Europe and other countries also specifically to see it. That's the main reason why they're coming now.
Yeah. And, like the last one was 2017. It wasn't really near me, so I didn't even bother. This year, actually, it's going to be 93% covered between like 2 something and 4 something in the Boston area. So I do have my glasses that I bought in 2017, and I do intend on poking my head outside to take a look.
Well, I hope it's worth it. I think we're going to get like 60% here in Florida.
Yeah. So it'll dim the lights a little bit. Yeah. So tell me, what have you been up to? How's business?
Well, actually pretty good. I mean, I think, since we last spoke, I was in Brazil, and a lot of interest in Brazil. I actually came out last year, as you're aware, with my first book, Confessions of a CIA Spy, The Art of Human Hacking. I came out in Spanish and Portuguese, and that's really been fruitful because I'm able to take the book to these Spanish-speaking countries, or in case in Brazil, Portuguese, and people love it, and so that's been useful. I'm going to do more return trips to Brazil. Hopefully, I'm going to be traveling to Mexico in the very near future, and there's a lot of domestic requirements I'm having also that seem to be picking up for conferences and trainings. How about you?
I just actually had an ask via a speakers bureau to do a program for ISC in Brazil myself.
Really?
Yeah. And I've spoke in Bogota, Colombia, probably about maybe 10, 12 years ago at this point. The gig's not, in stone yet. I'm probably one of like 10 speakers that are being considered. And, I know that like the majority of the audience is going to be on a headset and it's going to be translated while I'm presenting. And, awesome. Like, I hope I get the gig and all. I just wonder, like, don't they have Spanish speaking experts in Brazil? Like I would.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
They do, but there's an appreciation for people that have expertise that come from outside of Brazil as well. I mean, they seem to have the thirst for this type of, contact. I was, even when I was down in Brazil, I even had the press that wanted to interview me. So what we can provide is not only that expertise, which some of the Brazilians, of course, will have, but also that particular optic from outside of Brazil, regarding what are the things that we're dealing with in the United States that maybe they're not dealing with yet or coming their way. And in turn, us going down there, there's a lot of things that we can learn from the Brazilians because they've had to deal with some of these things for a long time, and yet which are just beginning to hit us here, such as the virtual kidnappings. Okay, one example that's been going on for a long time in Brazil, and it's just starting to hit us here in the United States.
Right. So how is your business post-COVID versus pre-COVID?
Well, there's a good story and a bad story. I guess the good story is that it's starting to pick up a lot better now compared to the year before, let's say the year before that. But it's still far from pre-COVID in the sense of there's not as many requirements for people to come in and as a speaker, as a keynote speaker, or even just to provide training. It seems like so much of it has converted over to virtual. And, even virtual prior to COVID, most of the virtual presentations, you had to pay a fee if you wanted to attend the virtual. But now almost all of the virtual presentations are free. And so it's just kind of like, I was thinking about this earlier this morning. How much do people pay for education versus how much do they pay for entertainment? I think it's incredible how much more we pay for entertainment and how much we want to learn and how we value education, at all levels, including security awareness. To me, it's kind of sad But yeah, I feel like it's still not where it needs to be.
Yeah. So when you say virtual, I think you also might mean e-learning too, like digital pre-recorded.
Yeah, I do. But I guess what I'm dealing with mostly these days is the virtual versus the pre-recorded. I tried to do the pre-recorded before COVID, and I was, there's a market. There's definitely a market for it, but it's a lot of work. And things keep on evolving so much, especially in our industry, that you constantly have to start updating these things. And so I've been looking more at the virtual.
Yeah. So what I have noticed is that my speaking business has dropped probably about 40% since COVID. Without a doubt, over the past year or two, it's definitely picked up prior to 22, 23, and so forth. 24, I've booked a lot of business in January, February, and March. But without a doubt, free as it pertains to companies that offer fishing simulation and other products and services offer free e-learning as a loss leader to get butts in seats for their fishing simulation. And I think what's happening is post-COVID, security awareness managers are just utilizing free e-learning and maybe fishing simulation as a form of compliance just to check the box so that they appear as if they are doing enough. And that's really all they're doing is good enough. And I don't really think there's a lot of change in behavior taking place with simply just e-learning and fishing simulation by itself.
That's right, because this training is not really leading people far enough into critical thinking. It's sort of like, what's the threat of today? Oh, learn that someone might call you trying to get you to do X, Y, Z. Okay, I'm ready for that. But they don't really get to the actual, the foundation of these types of scams and how do you analyze them? How do you think about them? How do you react to them? They don't really train that.
Yeah, and the interaction between a facilitator or presenter, somebody like you and I, and the audience itself, that interaction, that Q&A, that going back and forth, those questions that audience members ask and the response that the facilitator provides, and then the questions in response to that facilitator's answer, I think that's where all that critical thinking, abstract thinking is all fleshed out. That you really can't get that in e-learning presentation that's just not interactive. It's just coming at you. Whereas with a live program, you're actually getting like that back and forth that you really need to kind of flesh out various ideas and scenarios.
Well, I agree. And I mean, probably not all listeners can appreciate that, but if they can just imagine being in the situation of it being an instructor, right? And now you're taken out of the classroom and you're just dealing with the computer screen and you don't really even see the people typically who are listening to you. You don't know how many are there. You might know if the software tells you, but you don't know if they're, how many are there, if they're looking at you, if they're looking puzzled, if they're looking at their cell phones while they may be listening to you. You don't see them, and you might end up the presentation and maybe with only a question or two, and from a sense of being someone who likes to facilitate, who likes to educate people. It's. I mean, we still make money doing it, but it's just not the same.
Right. Yeah. So I for those who are watching, now or afterwards, once the video is provided, there's no substitute for live, on stage, in your face learning. So if you are a check the box compliance security awareness manager, fine. But if you want more, really get the job done, change behavior, call me and Peter. Okay.
There you go.
All right. So, Peter, lots going on. Let's talk about right here. We have Stars and Stripes, which is the U.S. government's military magazine. Cyber threat to U.S. power grids escalating as election approaches. We've long known Russia and China and others. U.S. power grids are facing heightened risks of cyber and physical attacks as the election nears, according to the nation's top reliability regulator. The increased threats come from state-backed China, Russia hackers, as well as the type of physical assault that happened at North Carolina substations late in 2022, if you remember that one. It goes on to say that Jim Robb, Chief Executive of North American Electric Reliability Corporation, which sets the standards. We are anticipating a fairly active year on the security front, Robb said at an Electric Power Supply Association conference in Washington on Tuesday. So, Peter, what are your thoughts here?
Well, first of all, I feel like that title of this presentation is this article is a bit misleading. I don't see really much of a correlation between this increased threat and the fact that we have U.S. elections coming up. I think it's more, this has been going on for a long time. This has been an increasing threat throughout the last several years. There's been a lot of probing done by these state actors, like by Iran and China, Russia, etc. There are plans on the shelf for when the time comes to actually attack these particular installations, to knock out our critical infrastructure. And the electricity is one of the big parts here. So I think probably to measure about the increasing threat would be more aligned with taking a look at what are the geopolitical events that are happening. And is it possible that the United States is getting more and more sucked into some of these, such as, the escalation between Russia and Ukraine, and potentially, the escalation in Gaza, right? So this is when there is going to be potentially an attack, it's going to be tied to something specific, a retaliation or part of to try to knock us out of these sort of infrastructures that we have. I don't think the U.S. election, one way or another, is going to really impact our concern that something's going to happen regarding. This is just my opinion, right? That something could happen regarding the election. I could be wrong.
So I'm going to agree with you to a point. I agree with everything you said. I'm going to add to. I think that the spin on this, the reason why it's saying that the threat to U.S. power grids escalating as the election approaches is that China and Russia, I think, would love nothing more than to have Trump as president. And so by compromising our electrical grid to any degree, if anybody in this country is inconvenienced in any way, and they can point the finger towards Biden, and that means they vote in Trump, I think that's the motivation behind hacking the grid prior to the election. What do you think?
Well, another question would be, if they hack the grid right at the election, is that going to disrupt individuals being able to vote, and can it skew the results? I don't know.
That is another possibility. Chaos, right? Yeah. All right. Well, that said, one thing that I've always said, you have to have a backup supply of water. You have to have a backup supply of food. Because if the grid goes down for any period of time, that ultimately means that you may not get clean water, or running water for that matter. It may mean that all the food in your fridge spoils. It might mean that the supermarket shuts down because they don't have electricity to cool the food, never mind lights to allow you to shop, and never mind cash registers to process credit cards and so forth. Okay. So you need to have a backup of food and water, and I think power too. I'm a big fan of dual fuel generators. And, Peter, you being in Florida, which is like, the epicenter of, some of the most devastating hurricanes we've ever had. I think that this is like a necessary tool. And dual fuel means it works off of gasoline and propane. Now, I have a dual fuel generator, and I have it plugged, so wired such that I have a switch on my electrical panel, and it'll power up hallway lights, all of my kitchen, my mechanical room, and my office. So I have internet, I have heat and hot water, even like air conditioning if I needed it, and also my refrigerator and my microwave and my stove and the lights in the kitchen. And so, that dual fuel generator, I have never actually put gasoline in it. It primarily works off of propane because gasoline spoils like vinegar, whereas propane lasts forever. And at any given point in time, I have 4 to 6 20-pound propane tanks ready to go.
That's awesome. I think there's some people out there, though, that have gotten solar panels, including myself, within the last few years. And there's a tendency, I think, a lot of people think, well, if electricity goes out, I'm still going to have my power coming through the solar panels, but that's not the case. That's usually, unless you have a battery that's being charged in your home through the use of the solar power, there's not going to, if you don't have that battery, when the power goes out, the solar power is not going to really do anything for you.
Yep. And for those of you who might consider a dual fuel generator, this Westinghouse at 6,500 watts for $580 is a bargain. That's a great, great price for that with free delivery. Are you kidding me? You know, like you should buy 2 of those. Like that's an excellent, excellent product. Westinghouse is a good brand. And that's a great deal. Just saying. Okay. Yeah. All right. Next, new security footage shows Texas man successfully sneaking onto plane. Okay. Peter, I thought this one, I just like saw this and was like, wow, you know, like it's not like crazy that something like this would happen. It just is a bit unnerving. And, you know, you see this guy right here, 26-year-old is captured photographing the boarding pass of fellow travelers. That's the guy right here. That's the boarding pass. That's the guy he was actually, you know, you can see the phone in his hand, right? And look I think what happened was here is the guy got through TSA security. Right now, pretty much at most airports, all you need is your driver's license or passport. And once you don't even need a boarding pass. Once your driver's license or passport is scanned at TSA, then you get through. And they know based on your driver's license or passport that you are flying that day. Okay. And it seems what happened is this guy got through security, but he missed his flight. And so he, instead of taking like the later flight that might have cost him some money through the airline in which he was already traveling, he decided to get smart and snuck on a plane using somebody else's boarding pass that he photographed. And if you read the article, he actually had photographed a bunch of boarding passes, they're saying like 4 to 6 of them. And it was like a minor underage girl whose boarding pass he successfully got on the plane with.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Prior to, I mean, several years ago, a lot of the aircraft had vacant, you know, they had extra seats. They had vacant seats, so it wouldn't be that hard for someone just to take an empty seat and sit there and not get questioned. But these days, almost all the planes are so full that if you don't have a seat, you might not be able to find anyone that's available. I thought he had also snuck through TSA, doing the same thing, which I was like, how could he have done? I mean, I thought there was a correlation between traveling and actually your document, and it would have been impossible. But if that's how he did it, I can see that is a vulnerability, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, based on the research I did, that he had a functional boarding pass but missed the actual flight. And it was that functional boarding pass that facilitated him getting actually through TSA.
Well, now it's a felony.
It's a felony, and he's never going to get TSA pre.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. But just, know that this is a thing. And, like you see suspicious behavior. In this case, the guy was hanging out in the bathroom. And the flight attendant's like, what are you doing in there? And when they actually checked his boarding pass, they see an underage girl in his seat. And they're like, this is not right. So the flight attendants had a handle on it. But, things happen, man. It's just like crazy is everywhere.
You know what? I want to bring up something here. How safe do you feel the fact that people are using TSA pre? I mean, does that mean that everybody that's there, they never have had committed a criminal offense, I suppose, but does it mean that they might not commit a criminal offense in the future?
Yeah. So I know that that TSA pre, I'm approved for TSA pre and Global Traveler. And I had to actually sit down for an interview for Global Traveler at the airport. And I do know that your Global Traveler / TSA pre number, that information is in the system. And whether or not if you ever are convicted of any type of a felony during the time in which you are TSA pre, I don't know that the airlines or TSA or the federal government would actually cross-reference that data with your TSA pre. I don't know that. I would consider, though, in the future, should your TSA pre be renewed, I would imagine that they're going to cross-reference that with federal databases. Because at this point, I know that like you can't just go out and buy a firearm without there being a federal check. And I don't know if that same federal check is connected to getting TSA pre. I don't know that, but that is a good question.
Mm-hmm. Because not every, I mean, a lot of times there's, if someone does something, a massive shooting, or, does something that's really bad, they'll say, well, there was an indication that there was something there's a criminal record, but not always. I mean, someone, if you're going to have a criminal record, you start from somewhere. And so given all these problems that we have today, even with mental health issues, the fact that someone was able to get a TSA proved and didn't have anything, a black mark on their record, all of a sudden, something happens in their life. And, there's so many getting this now. I mean, you'll see that the lines are almost as long sometimes for the TSA than they are for the regular passenger standard.
Yeah, I actually canceled my what was that other service called Claire? I canceled my Claire because often the Claire line was longer than the TSA pre-line.
Yeah.
And the number and the cost jumped like 30%, 35%. And I was like, why am I doing this? But I mean, I was a fan at the beginning. All that being said, your question, it does actually, make me think. If you were convicted, say, of theft, why would that prohibit you from getting on a plane? Certainly it's a felony. It would definitely prevent you from getting a firearm. But why would it prevent you from getting on a plane? And should it prevent you from getting on a plane? I'm not like making a judgment call here. I'm just curious. Maybe, or if it was a crime of violence, a felony in general, should that prohibit you from getting TSA pre? I don't know. I'm not making a judgment call here. I'm just curious if that is a consideration or not, getting TSA pre. I do know with a global traveler, you do need to do an interview. And I don't know how deep they're digging into your actual background. I know that I don't have a felony and I know that I got it,
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Next, Peter, this is like craziness. Scams are becoming more convincing and costly, says HelpNet Security. Scams directly targeting consumers continue to increase in both complexity and volume, according to Visa, Visa MasterCard. With the use of generative AI and other emerging technologies, scams are more convincing than ever. Okay, consumers are increasingly targeted by scammers who rely on heightened emotions to create fraud opportunities. While the number of individual scam reports from June to December decreased, the total money lost increased, indicating scammers are targeting victims with more effective and costly scams. So pig butchering is capitalizing on holidays like Valentine's Day, loneliness, and New Year's Eve, loneliness. Through leveraging social media and dating sites, scammers lure victims into online relationships, loneliness, and convince them to invest in fake cryptocurrency trading platforms. Leveraging AI to create more convincing campaigns, pig butchering scams have led to billions of dollars of losses to consumers. 10% of surveys of adults have been targeted in pig butchering scams. The AI aspect of everything is flipping fraud on its head.
Really
Bad guys are reinventing fraud so fast, it's really scary.
It is. I just read recently a script that is used to train a lot of these scammers, they're working for organizations. It's not just one person out there doing this. You got organizations that have, it's almost like a call center, right? They got dozens, if not hundreds of people that are working there, and they recruit people to do this. Sometimes they might even traffic humans and basically not pay them hardly anything, but they have leverage over them. And so they train these individuals on how to conduct these sort of interactions, how they approach people. And when I read, it was like 5 pages long script about how to do this every single call, what to say, what to comment, how to react to a person, based on what they say. And it's just phenomenal. It's really scary.
And that's human interaction. That via AI, it's happening instantaneously, and it's clean and it's clear. And through Fraud GPT and other AI fraud platforms, it's making artificial intelligence, deep fakes, so much more effective. We recently saw in Hong Kong a money manager, I think, wired like $25 million out of the organization. And he had done that based on a Zoom conference that he was on with other money managers or others in the organization that was all AI generated. All the video was all AI generated. All the voice was all AI generated. And he was convinced it was all legit.
Yeah.
25 million.
And these are the ones we hear about. There's a lot of them going on where they're not reported, right? Because companies or individuals don't want to report a lot of times when they've been taken because they're embarrassed. It hurts their reputation. And so there's a lot more of these going on. We're just seeing or hearing about the tip of the iceberg.
So right here, DNYUZ, a Mexican drug cartel's new target, seniors in their timeshares. The operation is relatively simple. Cartel employees posing as sales representatives call up timeshare owners, offering to buy their investments back for generous sums. They then demand upfront fees from listing advertisements to paying government fines. The representatives persuade their victims to wire large amounts of money to Mexico, sometimes as much as hundreds of thousands of dollars. Then they disappear. So it talks about this guy right here. I am old, just like these clients, says Michael Finn, founder of Finn Law Group in St. Petersburg, Florida, which has represented thousands of people facing various forms of timeshare fraud. We tend to be trusting when someone calls, chatting us up and selling these dreams. Man. And it talks about a victim in here, right? This guy, James, 76, and his wife, Nikki, they received a call from a supposed real estate agent at Worry Free Vacations in Atlanta. And they ended up sending a ton of money. It goes on to say that, hold on. The couple said that they were depleted their life savings and now in debt, that they then even borrowed $150,000 from their daughters and sold their childhood home. And the guy says, I'm sure that if I were asking them, they'd say, how could you be so stupid, James said of his daughters. And that I asked myself the same thing. I used to think I was fairly intelligent.
It's almost incredible, but it is true. And so many people are taken by this. I never bought into timeshare. I feel it's maybe really great for some people, but I think so many people I come across, I regret that they actually bought it and they're thinking, oh man, if I could sell this, it'd be great. And then so they're combining that, people want to get rid of this asset in quotes, but at the same time, they're looking at the opportunity to make a lot of money, right? Like hundreds of thousands, not millions of dollars. And when the timeshare market, this can't happen. I mean, there's continuously timeshares on the market that people are trying to market and sell. And so this type of opportunity, you got to be really skeptical. And if you're sending out hundreds of thousands of dollars thinking that this is what I got to pay out to be able to get a property sold that I'm going to get $1 million for, I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's scary. It all comes back to awareness, right?
Yeah. My wife and I all liquored up while walking the streets of Puerto Vallarta back in 2003. Got stopped by some guy who offered us like $150 to go to a timeshare presentation and to buy my wife Ray-Ban sunglasses for another $150. So we were looking at $300 to sit down for a timeshare presentation. All buzzed up, never, being approached like that before. We were like, yeah, and we did it. And we bought. Peter, we bought. Okay? Now listen.
Well, I want to interject something here because I know there are people that do it and I've done it and sometimes that it's tempting, free meal, free airline ticket, whatever. But you got to come back at the end of the day when you're pitched and they're kind of like, they're heavy handing you. The response that I use that pretty much deflates any possibility is I say, I don't agree with the concept, or this concept is not for me. And when I use that, it's kind of like they give up. Otherwise, anything else you say, it's like they'll try to say, but this, no. When I just say, I don't believe in the concept.
Yeah. Well,
It
we
works.
bought when timeshares weren't a whole lot of money. The salesperson lied to us up and down all day long. She definitely scammed me and my wife. And the way she scammed me was the interest that I had was, can I rent this out? And she said all day long, yes, for twice as much as your maintenance fee costs. And I just believed her. And I could not rent it out once, for that matter. I will say that we have made the timeshare work for us. I did actually try to sell it at one point, but we've made it work for us to the degree where right now our maintenance fee, which basically is like 2 weeks of the timeshare, is like $1,100 for a 5-star resort. Can you go anywhere for 2 weeks for $1,100 at this point?
No.
No, like anyway, you go anywhere nice, it's going to cost you $300 to $500 a night, easy, all day long. So we've made it work for us. It's absolutely paid for itself in the long run, based on the amount of traveling that we've done. Like we just did, 10 days in Mexico. Like I'm as tan as anybody in Orlando that's been out in the sun on the golf course. So we've made it work for us. That said, I still get phone calls once a week from somebody trying to buy my timeshare or they can sell my timeshare. And I know that they're all scams. I know every single one of them is scams. And my response to everybody is, oh, we sold that thing a long time ago. Take me off your list. So, and I know that those who are employees of these timeshare companies are often hit up to sell the lists of the members of the timeshares. That's how the lists get into the cartel's hands. So anytime the phone rings, anytime you get an email, just hang up, say I sold it.
Yeah. Good advice.
Peter, tell everybody where you're at, where you're going, how can they get in touch with you?
Well, the easiest way to get in touch with me, go to my website, counterintelligence/institute.com, and or my LinkedIn page. And I'm always available, interested in speaking with people about the opportunities to provide security awareness training. April's a good month for me as far as being able to build up and update my presentations, because starting in May, I have a lot of presentations. I'm going to be traveling quite a bit. And for those of you thinking about October, it's Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So I'm already getting heavily. I mean, I still got some openings, but if you're looking for good professionals like myself or Robert, I mean, you better look at now, because that month is very difficult to book speakers.
Yeah, me too. And check out Peter's book, Why Are You Messing With Me? Senior Survival Guide on Fraud, Privacy, and Security. And also see his book, Confessions of a CIA Spy, The Art of Human Hacking, both on Amazon. We will provide links in the show notes. And y'all can check out me and my team at protectnowllc.com and our cybersecurity employee training, both live and via Zoom and or in person. And we also, of course, have e-learning if that's something that you want as well. So that's it. Peter, last words?
Be very protective of your eyes these days, as well as your pocketbook.
Yes. And be good and behave and be careful. And we'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.